I'm Sean Perrin, and you're listening to episode 145 of the Clarinet Podcast, the show for clarinetists. In today's episode of the show, we're joined by guest host again, Richard Hawkins, who is a master mouthpiece craftsman and professor of clarinet at the Oberlin Conservatory. His guest today is Boris Allakhverdyan, who is the principal clarinetist of the Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra. They discuss his early training, how his love of soccer helped motivate to practice as a student, dealing with nerves in a performance situation, and a whole host of other excellent listener questions that were submitted live. This episode does have the lightning round because we did have time for it, and I chose to leave it in for everyone to listen to today for two reasons. The first is because, again, the audio quality of this recording, because it was done on YouTube, is really, quite honestly, not very good, and I'm quite displeased with this, so all of these YouTube episodes won't be happening anymore. I'll be going back to my typical method, as I've said the previous few episodes, but just to get you up to date in case you haven't been around too much lately, and this is your first time tuning in a while. But the second reason is I want to give you sort of a preview of what the lightning round is like, and that's because right now I'm running a promotion for the next week. I'll probably extend it a little bit because of the election. I didn't realize my promotion was ending on the day of the US election, so it'll probably go until November 10th, but right now you can get 2 months of Clarinet Members Edition for free if you pay for the year up front. So that means that you're really paying about 80 cents per month to get the Clarinet Extended Edition, which is also ad-free and presented in better audio quality. You can listen on your regular device, and if you're interested in this, you can check it out along with our current 75 other Patreon backers at clarinet.com/subscribe. This really does help make the show possible each and every week, and I want to thank you even if you just for a moment thought that you might be interested in this but have decided not to support the show, because you know what, even if you're sticking around as a listener, you're still a big part of what makes this podcast possible, and I really do appreciate your support. Of course, I also do appreciate the support of our sponsors. We've got Leger Reeds. Imagine a reed that lets you focus on your music, lasts for months instead of days, and even saves you money in the long run. It's all possible with Leger Reeds, the world's leading synthetic reed brand made right here in Canada. The European cut reed is preferred by Leger artists all over the world, including Eddie Daniels, David Schifrin, Corrado Giuffretti, and many others. It offers a warm, clean sound with great ease of articulation and is now available for E-flat, B-flat, and the bass clarinet. Learn more at your local music store or head to leger.com. That's LEGERE.com. Take your playing to the next level with Bakun Musical Services. With 14-day trials, free shipping on eligible orders, and expert advice, you can be sure you're making the best choice for your musical needs. For Canadian customers, be sure to check out the new store that allows you to pay in Canadian dollars. And for absolutely everyone listening, I have an exclusive coupon just for you. You can save 10% on your next clarinet, accessory, or any other purchase at bakunmusical.com by being a listener of the podcast. Just use code Clarinet at checkout at bakunmusical.com. One last thing before we get started today. You might be wondering what happened to the Clarinet Halloween episode this year. I usually do one, and I just looked around and decided that 2020 was scary enough. Let's not scare the listeners with a Halloween episode of the podcast this year and just sort of continue on with the normal programming. So if you do want to check that out, though, you're in a Halloween mood and want to listen to some scary clarinet later tonight, you can check out the previous episodes at clarinet.com.
Now that you've gone through sort of the Russian school of clarinet playing and American school of clarinet playing, are there things that you see differences in the things that we use as far as technical passages or etude books and things like that?
I feel like nowadays the globalization is becoming more everything's becoming more globalized. So maybe the differences kind of wash out these days. Back when I was a kid, 90s and early 2000s, it wasn't as globalized. I feel like. So I guess the differences when I was studying there was maybe a little more technical aspect in the Russian clarinet school. So we would play lots of scales. We would play scales every lesson. We would play lots of etudes, and most of them would be German, actually, like Stark and Kropsch. A lot of German. I think back like in Soviet Union, it was a little bit more German influence in Russia, and then around 70s, I think. Actually, my teacher was the first one to introduce the German clarinet in Russia. French clarinet in Russia. But before that, it was all German clarinet. So I think it it was probably a little more German books of etudes, less rows, more crops, some close, but a lot of scales, a lot of etudes. On the other side, it was less work on the tone production, less work, little less work on the phrasing, a little like when I was studying there, I didn't know many orchestral excerpts. It was you who introduced me mostly to orchestral excerpts. Because back then I would be just playing Franz concerto, and Nielsen concerto and etudes and scales, a lot of like solo rep. And when I came to Oberlin, it was I looked at a different perspective of how to approach the music from more musical standpoint, from more sound production standpoint, that's probably would be my answer. And what actually helped me a lot when you taught me for these 4 years at Oberlin is when you said, because being an artist diploma and performance diploma student, you don't have that many classes. I would take soccer and
right.
Swing dancing with Sasha Rattle.
Oh, that's fun. With Sasha Rattle, right? Yeah. That's right.
So I did have a lot of time to practice, and you encouraged me to go to the library and just listen to a bunch of American orchestras play different rep. So I, by doing that, I kind of had more of an idea of what Chicago Symphony traditionally sounds like, what Cleveland Orchestra sounds like, what Boston Symphony sounds like. That helped a lot by listening, by sitting in the library and searching. Beethoven 6 played by Stanley Drucker, played by Marsalis, played by Larry Holmes.
Yeah.
So knowing that, learning that from you was a huge thing.
When you experienced that and you were listening to the different orchestras in the States, and you're picking up the different nuances of the sounds, the different types of sounds that the different clarinet schools have, did you find did you find there were differences enough in the way that they sounded that you wanted to pick up little bits of everybody? I mean, was it something that is sort of the research, like you hear something, you really like it and you want that quality, and then
absolutely,
you hear another one and you pick it up, and that's one of the benefits to listening so much to different kinds of clarinet playing. I think it's really
absolutely. And back in the day, 20 years ago or 15 years ago at Oberlin, YouTube was not as big as now. Now you have so many more. I remember you were giving me a little like a hard drive. Remember?
That's right. That's right.
I still have that with all because it wasn't as easy to find recordings.
Right.
Back then. Now I think having all the Spotify.
Sure. In fact, it's almost so saturated that I think a lot of students now find it hard to find where to go to find, to hear the great stuff. I mean, I find that's something that's very, you really have to steer everyone in certain directions to find things, because there's so many places people can go to listen, So going back a little bit again about talking about your youth, what was sort of your biggest struggle when you was a kid on the clarinet?
I was quick a lot.
Yeah.
I think my chin wasn't, first couple of years, it wasn't as solid as it would be. So my dad would be like, "Oh, I don't care how much you're gonna practice." For some people, it takes 10 minutes to fix that. For some other people, it takes 10 months to fix it. Whatever it takes for you, you just need to need to fix it. So I would squeak on the over the register, like on B and C clarinet when I was. Yeah, so that was probably the most challenging thing, to stop squeaking.
Do you remember? I mean, everybody does it. It's just part of the clarinet, and everyone has to understand that that's just it's one of those things. And
Yeah.
as many hours as one can put into doing it, and all of a sudden something happens, and it could be a slip of the finger, and then all of a sudden you think it's something that you're doing physically, so yeah, it happens to everybody. So everyone just needs to get over that, But one of the other things is, so when you were doing that, and you were fixing the embouchure, what kinds of things do you remember that you actually used in helping you fix that?
Mirror.
Mirror. Okay. Yeah, just watching yourself.
Yeah, watching myself to so the chin doesn't go up, doesn't move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, but it's frustrating to go through this. And
Yeah.
I remember my second year or so playing the clarinet. I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. This is like, and also at the same time I was starting to love soccer more and more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And my dad was like around the summer. School was not, school was done at the time, about the same time, May or June. And I was telling my dad, I don't know if I keep squeaking. I don't know if it's gonna work out. And my dad was actually smart enough to say, I know you love soccer. I know you dream to be a soccer player or whatever. But how about we make a deal here? You'll practice every day this summer for 1.5 to 2 hours. And trying to fix these, little things, and then I'll let you play soccer all day long after that.
That's very smart.
I thought it was a good deal, so I would, put my 2 hours a day from 10 a.m. to noon, and then go play soccer all day.
That's fantastic.
And I think that's what actually, after that summer, I think the progress was made, because I would put more hours.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's a great story.
Oh yeah.
When you think about that now, like now that you've done so much orchestral work now, and what are the things that you feel like you really are working on now as a professional?
Like right now during the coronavirus?
Well, just in general, without talking about that necessarily, like when you're in the orchestra or just in life in general, your busy schedule.
Well, I do try to play some technical things that kind of keep me going. Mm-hmm. I do try to play some etudes almost every day. When you're working full time, you don't have that much time to practice. So you kind of your practice kind of shrinks to something that you can do within an hour, really quick. Just whatever I need to work on, I work on, and compared to now, I have a lot of time, right? So I actually keep asking you for more music.
Well, I mean, what inspires you? Like in this time, what are the things that sort of get you going every day to practice?
I just have more time, so I start learning new pieces that I've never had time to learn.
Yeah. So what's on your stand today?
I've been looking at Traviata Fantasy.
Nice, right?
Carmen Fantasy by Rosenblatt, is Russian composer. I have Weber Grand Duo that I want to record at some point. I have Rose.
I don't know if anybody knows, but I think you have it somewhere. Is that the Gustav Langenus Grand Duo concertant duet for 2 clarinets? Have you ever seen that before?
I've never seen it.
So Gustav Langenus, of course, was one of the other sort of method books that we have that we use a lot of times. And there's several different things that, if you remember that one, that's out of the Langenus book. And Langenus, so happened his son went to Oberlin, and when Langenus came here, and George Wallen was the clarinet teacher here for a long time, and Langenus came to do a semester teaching at Oberlin, and then his son came to school here years later, and in, I think it was the late 50s, when Langenus passed away, he gave all of his dad's music to Oberlin. So we have these archival sort of duets, there's the 2 Brahms sonatas, and then there's the Grand Duo Concertant, all in the actual original edits. Yeah. If anybody wants them, let me know. I can get them to you, because they're not, I don't believe they're published. I'm not sure they're published anymore. But yeah, so that kind of stuff on your stand is great. It's a lot of fun, actually, to play that music. Now, I know that when you were also a student, you really became really involved with chamber music, and you started a group here at Oberlin, and I think within a couple of years it won the Fischoff competition that year. And I guess I wanted to ask you, now that you're a professional orchestral musician, how are you managing doing? Because I know you do a lot of chamber music. So how do you manage doing that in your life?
Yeah, I personally love playing chamber music. It's probably, I hate to say it, but it's probably my favorite thing. My favorite.
It's okay. That's okay.
I was being at Oberlin for these 4 years. It was probably one of the best 4 years in my life. To learn from you, to learn from my colleagues, to meet as many good friends that I'm still friends with. Best friends that I have are from Oberlin. And I was lucky enough to meet my future colleagues, chamber music colleagues, that we were just friends who decided to, okay, why not play some chamber music together? So we formed a group this way, not by taking a chamber music class or anything like that. We were just really close friends and decided to play together. And that's something that those kind of relationship you treasure all life, all your life. And we started playing together. It was Farhad and Anastasia at the time, and I think it was going well. And then we decided to participate in the Fischoff competition. And you and Milan Vitek and Sedmara were our coaches. Great team of coaches. And
in fact, I wanted to let you know, just last night we had a sort of honors banquet, and Milan just retired.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so yeah.
Congratulations. I mean, to him for it.
Yeah, of course.
And this was a wonderful time. We started playing together. We love doing that. We took the Greyhound bus to Indiana because back in the day we didn't have much money. Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
And then when we actually won the grand prize, Oberlin provided a limousine service for. So that was exciting. We still play together. Farhad is now a conductor, so we have a new violinist, Gulia. We still play together. It's not as many concerts as before, I would say, but we're still active.
Have you guys done some commissions and things like that?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Yeah, oh. But when we played with Farhad, he composed the piece for us. So, and I still play. I try to play as many chamber music pieces as possible.
It's such an important part. It's an important part of our repertoire. I think it's such an amazing,
absolutely
heightened experience. And I'm sure that
I try to do.
Yeah, and I'm sure that even playing in the orchestra with that experience, it helps you, gain relationships with others in the orchestra and be able to maneuver your way into the different orchestral music. Yeah. I've asked this of a lot of our guests, but now that you're older and you're sort of more stabilized, in your professional world, are there things that you have discovered in your own playing that you didn't know that you did before, or it's something that a technique that you've discovered that maybe is different from other players and or students that you see? Anything that you've discovered?
I don't know. I think I was lucky to have pretty good technique from I was able to learn how to double tongue and circular breathe at the early age. So it's a little easier to do it when you're young, I think, than when you're in your 30s, So I guess I was lucky to be able to do those little tricks.
Yeah, that's okay. That's good.
As older I get, I feel like some fingers are getting a little slower.
It happens.
Like my third finger in the left hand is getting a little bit slower. So I kind of try to find the etude book to make sure that finger is active,
That's great.
Yeah.
It's important that we do that. Otherwise, you can take a few days off, which I think can be good. Like sometimes it can be healthy to get away from the instrument. And then when you come back, it can feel sort of refreshed but you have to get right in there and start digging into those kinds of that work. Otherwise you'll start to feel things that are uneven and things like that. When you, I know you're probably doing a lot of recording with LA. And I've always seen you with pretty solid, nerves. Like I never thought that you had nerves like others do. Do you feel them at all?
I'm nervous.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Like, how do you deal with that?
I like everybody else, I get nervous. Depends on also what you play, what pieces, what environment. I get nervous, but somehow I'm able to tell myself to kind of calm down and do what I can do. Do what I'm able to do, and it's kind of a mental preparation right before you go on stage, I guess.
Yeah. So, like a routine. Do you have a routine that you have before you go on stage?
Not really a routine. I just play like right before going on stage. I play something really slowly. I don't really have a routine. For me, it's sometimes when I get really nervous, it's my air is a little different. So the number one thing that I tell myself to remember is to audition or performance to really use your stomach muscles and a little kind of control air, because I think if I control the air right, the embouchure and fingers are gonna do what they need to do.
Yeah.
So number one thing for me would be to like concentrate on, and to make myself less nervous would be, if I control the air, the rest will follow, kind of.
Yeah, that was always something I was I admired so much about Larry Combs, and that he was in such an amazing control of air all the time. And it's one of the things to me that made him so special, in that he could pick out different kinds of instruments. Not a lot of people know this, but through the 90s, the Chicago Symphony was playing German clarinets. And on the same concert as French clarinets, so they would have German repertoire, they'd play German clarinets, and on French repertoire, they'd switch back. And that was something for him that was always so easy. Like he could just pick up any instrument. It could be German clarinet, French clarinet, or early clarinet, and be able to immediately start playing the instrument so well. But I attribute a lot of that for him was because he had such incredible control of his air. So I think that's a great topic to talk about, just because it's an important thing. It helps with nerves, it helps with fingers, and all that stuff. Yeah,
because the first thing when we get nervous is we start biting, we start like playing, fingers are playing faster than they should be, so the air is kind of like a engine of everything, and then everything kind of falls into the right direction. Usually works with me.
That's good. So when you're going out and doing master classes and teaching youth on the clarinet, are there things that you find yourself talking about most often?
It's air.
Yeah. It usually is.
Air,
yeah. Is there anything else that you find that you talk about a lot?
I try to help them on the spot, where each of us have different issues to work on. So I try to point out the issues that specific student needs to work on most. If it's a embouchure moving too much, or fingers, not balancing right and left hand, or things like that. I guess it depends on the exact situation of each student. But air, I would say the most.
And I know that you've just started working at UCLA as well, and I'm sure you had a lot of sort of recordings to listen to for prospective students and things like that. Do you have any advice for the young players now, or the things that you hear when you're listening to prospective students?
try to recording device is important. Sometimes they would submit a recording on a really bad recording quality wise.
Mm-hmm.
I think the recording itself does make you sound better.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a good quality recording. Just do your best. Just don't play with beautiful sound. Don't rush regular things,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
try to put the music through so it speaks to whoever is listening to
Mm-hmm.
it.
Do you find, when you're hearing young players, do you find yourself listening to yourself at the same time? Meaning, how was I when I was 17?
Yes, always.
It's interesting, right? I mean, that's
Always,
something
yeah.
that I think we all do that. And I think, it's not a comparison game necessarily. It's just that you're trying to find where the bar is, and you're trying to see where everyone fits into certain levels and things like that, experience levels, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I find myself doing that too, and especially with some of the young players now that are just fantastic players out there. I mean, it's really incredible to see the differences of the youngest players on the clarinet now, as opposed to even 20 years ago. It's very, very interesting. And I think a lot of it actually is just, the social aspect of it, in that a lot of people are looking at different recordings and finding things they really get inspired about through YouTube and various other means. It's really exciting.
I guess one more thing, I was still thinking of previous question.
Yeah, that's okay.
Record yourself as much as you can, and try to fix the things that in the original recording wasn't quite right. So I would record myself if I prepare for a big audition or solo competition. I would record quite a bit and then listen to it from a perspective of you're the judge. Like, you're not listening to your own playing, but you're actually judging that person.
Yeah, I mean, we are definitely our best critics, right? I mean, I think listening to ourselves all the time is really, really important. So in your experiences, working with so many different people across the world now, chamber music and orchestrally and solo works, you've done quite a few concertos all over the place, different conductors, different players. Are there moments of advice that you have heard from other people that you remember as being really important things that, that you think about all the time?
Be yourself. Don't try to copy anybody. Just put as much musicality into each performance as you can.
Yeah. Passionate. Yeah.
Passion. Exactly. That's a good word. Yeah.
When you were going from, basically, I think you started Kansas City and then you went to the Met. Mm-hmm. What was that experience like to you? Like going from, being on a big stage and then being in the pit?
Yeah, it was challenging because in Kansas City we would play some operas during the year, but not as many, not as much as I wish. So going from stage to the pit, it changes your perspective a little bit. You can sit however you want. You don't need to worry about how you look. So that's a good aspect, I think. you just truly concentrating on your music, on what you do, and also being at the Met is more like playing chamber music, believe it or not, because your ears are constantly listening to what's going on stage, to what's going on in the orchestra. So it's like chamber music in huge setup.
Yeah.
And obviously, the hours of when you used to play in a symphony, 45-minute Brahms symphony, and that's it. Playing Meistersinger of 6 hours. That's just it's just a different pace. How many reeds do you use during a 6-hour opera? What kind of? It's like a more organized process going through it, and it just you get used to it. But at the beginning, it was a little challenging, Mm-hmm. And learning all the rep was. I would listen to a lot of stuff on YouTube, on Spotify, on Matt's opera website.
Yeah.
To get the tradition, to get the how they do it, how each other opera orchestra does it. So just knowing the operas,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
half of them I didn't even know.
Yeah.
But I remember going back home to Moscow and practicing. My first operas were La Bohème, Traviata, Così fan tutte. I remember, and my dad wasn't in the 10 years in the opera theater orchestra. So he would be telling me actually like, oh yeah, there's in this page, there's another solo you should look into. So that was actually very helpful. He helped me quite a bit actually with that rep as well.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
I was going to ask you, did you feel a growth in your musicality, just playing that repertoire?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Each step of my career, I feel like I learned so much.
Uh-huh.
I learned a lot having a full-time, job in Kansas City, my first full-time job. I learned a lot there for 4 years. Then I moved to the Met. I learned more. Then I moved to LA. I learned more. You just learn from your colleagues, from
mm-hmm.
experiences, from conductors. I think it's a process that never ends.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, it's definitely. I mean, I think we are all sort of reassessing what we do every day, and those experiences can only add to the sort of the excitement of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
When you so then when you went to LA and sunny LA, did you find that big shift now going back from the pit into the big stage?
Somehow that shift was easier.
Okay.
Going to the Met was more challenging than coming from the Met to LA. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I only spent 3 years at the Met.
Mm-hmm.
I still remembered what it's like to be on stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
I think maybe when you spend more years at the Met, like my colleague Whitney spent like 12 years at the Met. That's going back to the symphony orchestra is a little bit of an adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
But in my case, it wasn't so much because also during the Met, I would play. We would play like several concerts in Carnegie Hall.
Right.
I would do like summer festivals, like symphonic festivals. So somehow it wasn't as challenging from the Met to LA feel as from Kansas City to the Met.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you have any exciting projects coming up in the next, year or two?
Year or two. Well, I was supposed to premiere a new clarinet concerto. Ukrainian composer Alexei Shor
mm-hmm.
in Malta.
Oh, wow.
So that hopefully will be rescheduled.
Mm-hmm. What kind of piece is it?
It's like a easy on the ear kind of new piece, but easy on the ear.
Big orchestra, chamber orchestra.
Big orchestra, yeah.
Great.
Pretty big orchestra. About 20 minutes, 3 movements.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that will be rescheduled at some point, maybe next season or season after. As long as like near future, I'm teaching at the festival. Yeah. Virtual festival at Philadelphia International Music Festival at the end of June. Online, things like that. Recording a little project for LA Phil.
Good.
Things like that.
I mean, I think it's important that everyone start connecting, these online summer festivals, and talking about that just because, and I think that the Clarinet Jobs site is putting together a list of things just for people to see and be involved with for the summer. So a little plug in for them, because I know they're working on that.
Yeah.
So it's such a pleasure, and it's already been time. And I think Sean's going to come back in with some questions. Okay. I think from Facebook. So what a pleasure having you, Boris. And thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, such a pleasure. Hi, Sean.
Yeah, thank you both. Hey, I'm back. I told you I wasn't going far. Thank you both so much for coming on and for taking part in this. I just think it's so interesting to listen to people chatting who have a rapport already. And, those of us listening, I think we forget sometimes that the music world, and especially the clarinet world, like it's a pretty tight community. And there's a lot of relationships that go on amongst people and past and present, really. So we've got some great questions here that have been sent in. If you have any last minute ones, I've actually got 3 screens going here. So I feel like I'm flying a spaceship or something. But if you got some more questions to post, you can do that in the chat on the Facebook here. I got my questions here, and then there we go. We're all ready. So the first one, I actually had a question pop into my head while you guys were talking about the different cities that you've lived in. And that is, how do you deal with your clarinet in different climates? Because moving from New York to LA, for example, that's a pretty big transition. And I imagine there's a lot to learn about reeds and clarinet. And I wonder if you could talk about that a bit.
Yeah, it's a bit challenging, obviously, especially with the cold winter at Oberlin or New York. But you kind of learn how to, prepare your reeds ahead of time. I know we're not supposed to talk about the equipment. I have this case that's a humidity controlled case. Mm-hmm. So that helps a lot when I travel. If I go from, 70-degree weather in LA to 20-degree weather in Colorado, that helps me a lot. I keep my reeds inside the case, and this way reeds don't change as much. So the case helps. The experience of preparing your reeds for specific environment, for altitude or for cold. Usually you use a little harder reeds when it's colder. You use softer reeds with altitudes and things like that.
Well, that was my next question. You were talking a lot about air support and developing the airstream. Have you found that this is different in different altitudes and places that you've lived?
Yes, absolutely. Well, not so much in places I live, but in altitude, of course, you're shorter on your air. So that's more challenging.
Totally. So the next question here, this is from, go ahead, Richard.
Sorry, I remember the very first time I went to South America and I played the Mozart Concerto, of course, the Mozart Concerto. And it was got off the plane, I had my first rehearsal with the Colombian Philharmonic in Bogota. And it was, no one had ever talked about altitude with me, like ever. And I had no idea. So I started playing and it was like, da, 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 dee, da, da, da. Like I was breathing like constantly, it's, oh my gosh. Suddenly I was like, my reed, I was like immediately starting to work on my reeds. Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things. How are you supposed to know until you experience it, or unless someone tells you, right?
That's true.
It's kind of hard to explain without actually trying it too. Like someone can tell you all day about it, but until you've actually been there doing it, it's kind of all speculation, right?
I actually have a box of reeds, a case of reeds, always in my case for altitude, anything 5,000 and up.
Nice.
Really?
That's great.
Yeah, I once heard of reeds for like 18 months in there.
Wow.
That's great.
I once heard of a player who would keep different reeds in different cities so they would stay acclimatized in the different regions, which is kind of a neat idea. But I guess you can't play them much when they're not in your house.
Yeah, surprise.
Yeah, let's see what they're like today. So the next question here is from Christopher, and he has a really great question. So last time Anthony McGill was talking a bit about going beyond learning just the technique and getting into the music. How do you determine the amount of time spent practicing technical aspects of playing versus the musical aspects of playing?
Good question.
That's a difficult question.
It is, yeah.
I'd say probably about half.
Mm-hmm.
For me,
do you feel like they're kind of one and the same though? Maybe that's why it's a difficult question. It's hard to.
Yes, some pieces would automatically have them both, so you don't need to specifically work on technical and then musical. So you kind of work on it together. So it's kind of like a balanced concept, I guess.
Love it. So this next question is from Joel, not related to the clarinet, so we'll see what comes out. I'm interested. What other subjects did you study at Oberlin, and what interests outside of clarinet do you have?
Except soccer and swing dance.
Besides soccer, yeah.
Well, I was fortunate, to do a lot of chamber music and orchestra and wind ensemble, contemporary music ensemble, I think it was called, with Team Weiss. I've been playing a lot at Oberlin, and I was it helped a lot.
Was there anything outside of clarinet you were doing there, or
because since I was an artist diploma and performance diploma, I didn't take any music history or music theory because I already done it at Moscow Conservatory. So my studies were primarily, mostly, lean towards the performing part of it. So, that's why I loved these 4 years the most.
It's so funny. It reminds me a bit of when I'm out at clinics and stuff. And one of the things I ask kids when I go around is, tell me your name, and just to break the ice, tell me a bit about yourself. What else do you do outside of band? And then they ask me at the end, what else do you do? I'm like, well, in addition to clarinet, I have a clarinet podcast. I work for a clarinet company, and that's a lot of clarinet.
My favorite stuff in college was poetry classes because it was so
really
linked to music and sentences and structure of sentences and thinking about that in a musical way. I really thought that was an important part of my college time too. Yeah.
That's very cool. I had someone tell me once that one of the best things they did as a vocalist was take German and French courses because they're constantly doing that. Someone's written a message in Russian here. I wish I could read it. I don't know what it's saying. My wife can read those words, but I'm sorry I can't. So the next question here, it says, how did you develop your incredible tonguing? And that's from Omar.
I don't know.
Practice.
Double tonguing, I would spend 2-3 months to develop that, because you want your throat tonguing to be as strong as the tongue. So you would squeak a lot on playing scales just with the ka 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 with that sound, and obviously you would squeak a lot, and then you would start doing ta ka ta ka ta. So that I actually practiced. I never really practiced my single tonguing. I think I was just somehow lucky to have that from the beginning. I don't know, but double tonguing I was working on when I was 14, 15, somewhere there.
Well, I think you make a good point. I mean, some people have a natural kind of aptitude for certain parts of playing, and some people just they seem to have more difficulty. So I think sometimes different ways to explain things are, but sometimes you just got to get in there and start working, like you say. But about the double tonguing, do you think that are you using the syllable ka, or do you change to kind of a g sound? Because I've heard other people say that it can be really helpful to kind of de-emphasize the
daga or taka. Both kind of work. I guess as long as back to the single tongue, and I think playing the Stark and all this German etudes kind of put me on that, or automatically made me sound better on the single tongue, and I think because the Stark and the Kropsch etude books have a lot of tonguing exercises in them.
Well, I think what helps too is listening to the end of the note. Like a lot of people are focused articulation only on the beginning of the sound, but it's both sides of the note, right? So if you can get in there and think about it that way, maybe.
And another thing that sometimes I think of instead of tonguing, this is the reed, this is your tongue, instead of tongue in the reed, you kind of like more like a pizzicato kind of thing.
Yeah, I describe it like touching a really hot stove just to see if it's on. You don't just put your whole hand. You're gonna just kind of tap, right?
Yeah, a little bit more like this instead of actually hitting.
But yeah, it's not about hitting the reed. It's about stopping the airflow and coming back from the reed, right? Yeah, totally.
I think that concept makes it a little faster if you think of that way, instead of actually tonguing it.
Mm-hmm.
And
totally.
Trying to work on the tonguing exercises that cover as many registers as possible. So you could sound similar on each register. So you kind of sound like a keyboard. So it's not like you have to adjust for higher register and then readjust for lower. So it sounds very even.
Well, I think this kind of opens up an interesting side topic. A lot of people, I think, feel that people who've reached a very high level in playing, that they have some kind of secret weapon to share. And sometimes I'm not sure if that's really true. I think it's a lot of experience, a lot of playing. As you say, your main tip here, from my perspective, was play in all the registers and get used to it, right? And that really is kind of maybe what people need to try and do if they can.
There's no one secret to anything in music, I think. I think you kind of you get as much information and see what works for you.
If someone does find secret sauce or weapon or whatever, do tell me, but send me an email. No, don't don't post it on here.
I think one of the other things to think about too is the fact that we tend to avoid the stuff that's hard for us.
Yes.
And if they're, that's the stuff that we have to work on to get better at. And a lot of times, students, I find they will get in the practice room and practice all the stuff that they love doing and or they do really well. And that's really, it builds your confidence. But at the same time, you have to spend that extra time working on the things that you don't do well.
That's right.
Well, and that goes back to the very first question, which was spending time between technical and musical. Maybe what that could mean is making sure that half your practice time, you don't sound as great as the first stuff because you're working on stuff that's harder, right? I'm personally guilty of exactly that. There's a reason that after 5 years of noodling around on bass guitar, I'm not actually a great bass player. I tend to just play my favorite songs and the technique book collects dust on the shelf, So next question here. This is from Mary Bakun. She says, can you please share your thoughts on playing clarinet in the opera medium as a means of expression that has unique rewards?
Opera medium register?
Playing in the opera as a medium, I think she means. Yeah, like as a genre.
The opera honestly has one of the most beautiful solos, I think, in the clarinet literature. So I actually try to give my students those opera books and opera CDs that you actually introduced me to at Oberlin. I still have that CD, and I send it to my students to learn that, because a lot of us still, we graduate from college, we don't know the opera excerpts. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's one of the most, most wonderful solos ever written. It's more intimate. Mm-hmm. Playing in the opera, it's more intimate to me. It's more like a chamber music kind of feel versus playing a Brahms symphony. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's a good answer. Yeah, I think it's really, it is one of the highest forms of expression, I think, is opera music, and because it's so related to singers, and which is such a, humanistic thing, and we're always trying to have the clarinet feel that way, right? It's sort of our ultimate goal, to make it feel that way. And I think Mary's question is really great. I think that's really. It's very difficult to do, but I would imagine that when you're in the situation, you have a certain kind of freedom in it that you may not have when you're playing in orchestral music. Yeah. It's just a different kind of team.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think it's probably easier just because of the medium too, to personify the characters and emotions sometimes. And the clarinet, you're right, it's such a vocal instrument that it blends well with the genre. So that's interesting.
One of the best comments I've ever get would be, it reminded me of the human voice. One of the.
Yes.
We try to imitate that.
In some languages, I'm not sure about Russian. Maybe you can let me know. But in some languages, the word for singing and playing is actually the same word. Is that the same in Russian, or because I know in Romanian, I'm pretty sure that it is. Yeah.
We have both words.
Yeah, both words. Excellent. So this is an interesting question here. I'm not exactly sure what they mean, but I'll ask it anyways. Jasmine says, any suggestions for progressive repertoire lists? Like, I guess she's looking to work from easier things up to harder things, if I interpret that right.
As far as the pieces go, I always, if I have somebody, in high school or younger than that, I would always put them on like Rabot or Messager or Concertino before I move into Weber Concerto or Spohr Concerto, So smaller pieces, like I love French pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, French pieces that are written for the Paris Conservatory competition.
Mm-hmm.
Any of those work great, like Rabot or Messager, great pieces for like high school level.
Okay.
And then I would move. I love those homages by Bela Kovac, things like that. And then you move to harder things like Spohr concertos, like pieces like Debussy or Vidor and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was going to say Premier Rhapsody, I think, is one of the archetypal examples of that one. That one's tough, though.
Yeah. Also another one.
There's another question here, and I'm actually sure if this is relevant, so you can let me know. But this is from Roy. He says, Boris, do you have anything to say about double lip embouchure and what resources you'd recommend? So do you use double lip in your day-to-day playing?
I don't. But
okay.
I sometimes I just try reads on it just to see what. It's a good tool to try and to make sure you're not biting too much. So I don't really perform with double lip, but sometimes I would like try things double lip. Yeah.
Practicing tool or something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So these last couple things here, Richard, you've done this before on the Clarinet podcast here. So these are just going to be for Boris, if that's okay. It's called the lightning round, and they're all just quick questions to be answered in just a couple of sentences. So we'll rocket through those, and then we are at the end of this conversation. So before we do that, I want to thank both of you again for coming on, and thanks to all who tuned in, all who asked questions. We have had a lot of people coming in and out of this conversation, and we're currently still at around, I think, 60 or 80 people. So that is excellent. So thanks for sticking around for the entire chat here. Lots of great things we learned today, I think. So this is the lightning round. So Boris, what piece of music, album, or performance changed your life most profoundly?
Copland Clarinet Concerto.
Nice. If you could play any other instrument in the clarinet, which would it be and why?
I always liked the bassoon.
The bassoon. Oh, interesting. I think that's the first time someone's answered that on here.
Or cello. Something with the
cello.
Lower.
Yeah. Bass clarinet. Yeah, that doesn't count. What is something about you or something that you like to do that I'd never think to ask or would never guess? Something interesting.
I think I mentioned it, but I love playing soccer.
Soccer?
Not a lot of people know that.
Yeah. Okay. What is one strategy you use in your day-to-day life to achieve success, like a routine or a habit or soccer, maybe? I don't know.
Get up early, clean your
glasses. Special coffee additives.
I don't really drink coffee, believe it or not.
You don't drink coffee? Oh, maybe that's the trick.
Tea drinker.
Oh, interesting. And so this next part is kind of like a time machine. We're going to go back in time a little bit. If you could relive the greatest moment of your career so far, which would it be and why?
I don't know greatest moment of my career, but I remember several times in my life when I achieved something and I got goosebumps from.
Yeah.
That would be getting accepted to Oberlin. and then when I won my first job, Kansas City job, and the Met. Those were like three moments when I received the news, I got goosebumps. So I guess those 3 moments that I most cherish, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. Just kind of like anticipation for the times ahead. What you kind of talked a little bit about this, so maybe we can skip it, but what is one thing that you know now that you wish you knew when you were 21? Or when you were younger as a kid?
Musically, right?
Yeah, musically. Or life advice, whatever.
That's a hard one.
He's not old enough to answer that question yet.
I guess try to be as nice, as friendly as to other people, to be as collegiate and as collegial as nice to other people. Sometimes when you're young, you think you allow yourself to be a little more expulsive. Is that a good word?
Yeah, totally.
So just being smart, trying to be nice to everybody.
Love that. And you mentioned some times with your father telling you you could play soccer all afternoon if you practice and stuff, but what was your very first musical memory? Do you recall?
Yeah, my dad playing, actually, my dad practicing at home all the opera exits.
Very nice.
All the Traviatas and then the Toscas.
And the last question is, if you could go back in time and meet any musician, who would it be?
Bernstein.
Bernstein. Oh, nice. Great. Well, thank you both for coming on. I can't believe it, but somehow we've managed to end right on the nose at 2:00 here Pacific. So that is a prodigious act in itself that we were able to do that. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. For those listening, if you missed the beginning or the middle, you can check this out in a couple days. It will be airing on the Clarinet YouTube page. So you can check that out at youtube.com/Clarinet. And again, thank you both for taking the time. Any last words before we go?
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to everybody. Thank you very much.
Have a great day and stay safe out there. Thanks for joining me here on the Clarinet Podcast. I look forward to seeing you next time. We'll have an episode between Richard Hawkins and Stephen Williamson of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and that is part 3 of 4 of the Clarinet Master Series. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening from and whatever device you're listening on, so that future podcast episodes will make their way to your device for free as soon as they're released. If you did enjoy the show today, please do tell your clarinet friends about it, and be sure also to check out the Patreon edition, or the Members Edition as I call it, which is available from as little as $1 per month at clarinet.com/subscribe. If you've listened to this point in the episode, you honestly are not only the target audience for this type of extra content, but you're also the listener who will enjoy it the most, so it really is right up your alley. And if you've been thinking to yourself, man, $1 is just way too much to pay for this amazing content that I get for free on my device every month, you'd be thrilled to know that I'm actually running a promotion right now where if you pay for the year up front, you actually get 2 months free. So what this means is that you'll get 12 months of Clarinet for just $10. That's about 80 cents per month or around 20 cents per episode. So I think it's got to be one of the best deals going. If you do value the Clarinet podcast and the lessons you learn here, think about how much a lesson with any of these people would cost, even to take part in a group class, and then imagine only paying 20 cents for that while you're listening to the show. It's a pretty great deal. I hope that you will interpret it as a good value towards your life. And also, I know sometimes too people say that they like to listen to the podcast while, driving to work or enjoying a cup of coffee or those kind of things. That's almost the same price as one Starbucks cup of coffee here in Canada. So you can now get a year of Clarinet for the price basically of a large latte in Canadian dollars. Isn't that crazy? Well, anyways, humor aside, thanks so much for considering supporting the show. If you do want to do that, you can head to clarinet.com/subscribe and become one of our 75 Patreon backers. We actually have some extra special Patreon backers who I quickly want to thank here. I'm just pulling it up on my phone, and to be honest, it's Halloween. So as I'm doing this, I'm watching out the corner of my eye, and I notice that someone looks like they're trying to come to my door. So we'll have to see if that happens. I may have to pause this recording and come back here in 1 second. But let's find the list of Patreon backers who we need to give extra thanks to here. 1 second. All right, here we are. So we have Robert W., Andrew M., David S., Debbie A., Glenn K., Jason S., Josh N., Karen D., Miguel D., Patty S., William L., and that looks like it for right now. But thank you so much to all of you gold members within the Patreon community for supporting the podcast at $10 per month or more. You're really going a long way to helping me make this show possible for listeners all around the world. Of course, thank you also to our sponsors, Bakun Musical Services. You can get 10% off your next clarinet or accessory purchase at bakunmusical.com. This is a great savings even if you're just considering buying a barrel or a mouthpiece. We've had many people take advantage of this coupon code, and even just this week, there was someone who actually purchased a new custom clarinet. Now, as you can imagine, when a clarinet costs, around $9,500, this is a really great savings. So it's a great perk to have as a listener of the podcast. And I really do hope that if you're considering a new Bakun product, you use the code Clarinet when you're shopping at bakunmusical.com. Also, thank you to Leger Reeds. I'm always talking about the consistency of their reeds and how I really do enjoy that. As you may know, I've been trying to practice every day here in a hashtag I started called Clarinet127. I kind of fell off the bandwagon, no pun intended, as far as posting about this because honestly, it wasn't getting great engagement and everyone and their dog is doing 100 days of practice competition. So I did stop posting about it every day, but I still am trying to play every single day, even if I'm putting most of my efforts into guitar because that's where I'm getting most of the reward. But I've been playing and using using my Leger reeds, of course. And what's really interesting is we've had crazy weather here. There was a blizzard last week for about 4 days, and then it went away, and now it's melting, and it's well above zero again, and it looks like what October should look like in my mind anyway. But you know what? My Leger reeds have been super consistent the entire time. I can pick my clarinet up and play. And as you know, one of the things about playing sometimes is that you spend more time trying to put the clarinet together and sort of feel that resistance to start playing. And it can prevent you from practicing. So I find when using Leger, I'm actually practicing more because it's just, I know it's going to work. I can even leave it assembled for a short time. Don't tell Maury or anybody else. But I can leave my clarinet assembled and, practice before lunch, swab it out, practice a little bit later, and my reed is still good the entire time. It's also great for teaching. So anyway, I also want to just remind you that they have a bass clarinet version of the European cut reed available now. And this is a new reed. You can check it out at your local music store or at leger.com. That's LEGERE.com. I'm your host, Sean Perrin, signing off from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Clarinet Podcast, the show for clarinetists. Happy Halloween and stay safe out there.